We're going
You can do it later.
Record. And with that, we'll let Joy take over the mic as our host this morning.
Good morning and welcome to the Creating Courage Over Fear workshop. I'm Joy B. Rudolph, and it's my delight to be Dave and Sue's virtual assistant as well as your host today. Today's workshop will help you shift from any fear and anxiety you may be carrying in here with you to leaving with a presence of courage, compassion, and confidence to face the challenges and crisis of COVID-19. We believe you'll not only leave with your own self-leadership presence transformed, but you'll be equipped to help those you love, live, and work with, as well as those you lead, to experience the same courage, compassion, and confidence.
Hooray.
And Dave, should I be seeing your screen now?
Let's see if we can set it up there. If it'll cooperate.
And as Dave does that.
Hello, can you guys see me?
Hi, yes we can, Robin.
I can't see you. How do I do that?
Click the grid view.
Oh, wait. There you are. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. We're just jumping in, Robin. If you might want to mute yourself for now, if you can, if you know how to do that.
Mute myself. Okay. No, really. Uh-oh, you're gone now. Mute myself. Mute. Got it.
Okay, so let's keep going. We want to express our appreciation for each of you who are attending, and we want to acknowledge the difficult circumstances that many of you find yourself in, whether that's directly or indirectly. We are in uncharted waters and circumstances, and as such, we find ourselves facing fears and anxieties to various levels of intensity. Yet all of you here are learners, hungry to create courage over the fear and anxiety so prevalent in our country today. And that means learners are equal leaders. So we thank each of you for your leadership during this crisis, whether it's leading your partner, your kids, your neighbors, or even people in the country. We have a variety of personalities joining us across the web. And some will
Starting with us.
And some will be watching in the future over the recording. So thank you all for attending. And all of you represent a variety of professions. We're especially welcoming our LinkedIn connections and a few new field network ontological coaches. Some of us will have an opportunity to lend our voice to the discussion today. You can unmute yourself when we get to that point in the presentation. If you have difficulty with that, at the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom panel, there's going to be a red microphone. So you can just click and unclick to unmute when it comes time for questions and answers and discussion. You can also submit your question in the chat box, which you'll also see in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that and chat. So if you have any questions throughout, just feel free to submit them via the chat, and there will be time for questions and answers at the end.
Thank you.
So if you guys aren't familiar with Dave and Sue Robson are the co-owners of LifeSource Coaches, and they are empowering you to overcome fear, conflict, and anxiety. As life, relationship, and leadership coaches, they have both attained the ICF credential of Professional Certified Coach. Sue founded LifeSource Coaches back in 2004, has her undergraduate degree in communications, as well as a master's degree in counseling. I think one of her catchphrases she has shared for years sums up her heart well in this COVID crisis. Freedom, healing, and wholeness comes in the context of relationship, not in isolation. We cannot successfully do this life thing alone. Coach Dave is Sue's partner in LifeSource Coaches, as well as the founder of LifeSource Leadership. His heart is to elevate both entrepreneurs and executives to their greatest good, whether in life, family, or organizational leadership. Dave has his bachelor's degree in business management, as well as a master's of divinity. Combined, Dave and Sue have over 60 years of leadership experience in both marketplace and nonprofit organizations. Not only do they own LifeSource Coaches, but they also founded LifeSource Inc., an educational nonprofit dedicated to elevating under-resourced emerging leaders and their families in the organizations they lead. And now, before we get started, I just want to sidebar and say, not only are they my colleagues, but they're also my coaches as well. And so while that may make me a bit biased, I'm so excited to learn from you guys today because I love how you are able to use really practical tools to help us get through trying times like this. So now that you guys know a little bit about Dave and Sue, welcome again to the Creating Courage Over Fear workshop. And Dave and Sue, the mic is all yours.
Thanks, Joy.
Thanks, Joy. Boy, we're glad to be here with all of you. We're glad you've joined us. As Joy mentioned, our hope and our desire today is to grow you guys experientially as leaders, because we can't lead people any farther than we've been on a journey ourselves. And so whether you're part of the Facebook Live crew that's joined us over last week, or part of the LinkedIn community that I'm a part of, we're glad you're here, and we're appreciate you guys as learners, because leaders are learners. And as we learn and grow today, we're going to be able, and our hope is that you will go back to your communities, your circles of influence, and lend that same leadership, whether that's with your partner, with your family, with your neighbors, and your coworkers as well. So we're glad you guys are here. We're taking kind of an ontological approach that's significant in the sense that it's regarding who we are as learners and how we do life from the fullness of our being. We're not just human thinkers or human doers, we're human beings. And the full component of who we are as human beings is not just our minds, but our emotions, our bodies, and our spirits. So those are the 4 capacities of which our tips are going to be based around today. I'm going to give this one more shot to try to pull up the PowerPoint presentation. It's not cooperating with me very well this morning. So let me try to do this again.
Gets to be the technology guru as well as the presenter. So there we go.
Okay, do you guys have my screen up?
We don't, but Dave, I can pull it up on my end too. That's an option.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay. Is that showing now, Joy?
Looks like it is.
Yes, great.
All right, hooray.
You got it.
Let's see if we can get this thing to advance. We'll catch up here. Oh, look at those 2 handsome folks. One of the things I wanted to mention as we move forward is that every one of your guys' story is unique, and it's valuable to the people around you as well as to us. And so we thank you for being part of our story. And we would love to hear your story. We're not going to have time this morning in our short time together, but we would love, if you would like to share with us, you can send your story via email or post it through some of the comments or messages on Facebook and LinkedIn. Today we're going to be creating a presence practice for you. This is something that I learned in the midst of my ontological coaching, and we've done intuitively for a long time. But we're going to talk about this presence with the full component of who we are in our mind, body, soul, and spirit. And we're going to touch on those 4 tips that we talked about during our Facebook Live, but with a little more detail and practice. We're going to find our center and come into acceptance. We're going to press into our emotions as well as our beliefs. We're going to choose and discover some truth to focus on. And then we're going to help you pull that all together and say, how do I go out in the world? And how do I choose my full presence? Not only to practice that in between relationships, but when I'm out doing life. So with that, we're going to jump right into our first tip, which is acceptance. Now, acceptance is all about like a GPS system. Wherever we go, you can't figure out your destination until you figure out your starting point. And so acceptance is just kind of saying, hey, this is where I am. I accept, I don't enjoy fear. I don't enjoy the anxiety of this new season, this uncharted territory, but I'm going to accept that that's my starting point. And until I'm able to get to that place of acceptance, until I'm able to really focus in and say, this is where I'm beginning. Can I really embrace the journey of where I need to go and set my destination and start to plan out my steps?
So we really encourage people to be kind and gentle with yourself as you accept where you are. When we're judgmental about ourselves or condemning about our emotions, it just drives them down deeper and they don't go away. They get buried alive and they come out somewhere. So acceptance is really powerful, a powerful first step.
There's several components of centering. They include deep breathing. And so we're not going to jump into this. We're going to have a beginning time here of just kind of some education that we're going to walk you through these points generally, and we'll give you a little bit of thought exercise, but we're going to take some time around 9:30, 9:35 or 10:35 and give you guys a chance to walk through this in full blown, and we'll have Sue kind of lead that. But take a deep breath like we are with our technology. Try to shift our focus, push pause button on all the multitude of meetings we've got left today, all the things that are in our thought patterns. And take just a moment, and you might even want to write down, take a pad of paper through our time this morning and think through, okay, what are a couple thoughts or worries that keep recycling through my mind, that add to my fear, that add to my anxiety? And just acknowledge those. That's part of acceptance, to saying, okay, here's reality, here's what's going on for me. And then kind of notice, how does that impact my body? Do I get tense and kind of focused? Do I kind of check out? Do I kind of go in denial mode? This is kind of a head start for what we're going to do in a few moments. But that's tip number 1, is acceptance. Tip number 2, press into the emotions. Emotions are energy into motion. You just kind of unpack that word, emotion. And it fuels either reactions or responses. And we kind of have a choice about which that happens. If that emotion that happens is fairly strong and we've had trauma in the past, it can hijack our amygdala and send us into fight or flight mode. That's reactions. And some of us have triggers where there's certain things in life where we get our buttons pushed. This is usually an emotion that drops into that fight or flight mode and our amygdala gets triggered. What we want to do with this exercise is we press into the emotions to say, what are the physical sensations that I'm feeling that alert me to the emotions that are going on? And then begin to go into acceptance and say, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath before I react and step forward into responding well versus just reacting. The distinction, emotion is what happens in a moment. A mood is an ongoing presence of responsibility to our environment. So a mood happens in the moment, but a mood is something that we can choose. It's an aspect, a target mood that we want to have, a target emotion or a group of emotions, but we choose those, and that's why we call it responsibility. So I'm able to respond to my circumstances rather than just emote and react. And so that's part of the work that we're going to do with these tips in this exercise today. Any questions on these first 2 tips so far, you guys?
Could you guys touch for just a second on the dangers of being unwilling to accept the present circumstances? Like if I am trying to ignore what's really going on, etc., where could that lead me?
Well, I'll jump into that
Sure.
one. I talked about burying emotions alive. They really go somewhere. They can go into physical issues. They can go into depression. They can go into stress, which, you know, when I said physical issues, I really believe they say what 90% of our physical issues are really emotionally related. But it also comes into when we've got anxiety that's underlying and we don't really know why, or we're snippy and snappy with the people we love. It does come out somewhere if we don't deal with it somewhere, at some point in time. Good question, Joy.
Yeah, thanks, Joy.
And just a reminder for our audience, when you are ready to ask a question, you can either unmute yourself during those times or feel free to submit your question in the chat box.
Thanks, Joy.
Terrific. This next screen should say roles of emotions. And basically, emotions play a huge part in our life. They impact what we do. Our passion, curiosity, inspiration, those are all emotions that impact what we do. It also affects how we do what we do. It can lend us perseverance. It can lead us into complacency and procrastination. It can give us confidence. And so being emotionally intelligent, having a higher EQ, and the good news is our IQ tends to be kind of set at birth with our DNA. That doesn't mean we can't expand that,
right.
but our EQ, our emotional intelligence, our emotional quotient is an aspect that we can learn and grow in. And so that's part of this aspect of what we do as coaches, and we'll give you some resources today that can help you with that as well. Emotions also impact why we do what we do. It can lead us to obligation. It can lead us to compassion. It can lead us to service. And finally, the other final role of emotions is it determines if we do something. Fear, faith, courage will all either bring us forward or push us back, put us in defense mode or drive mode to move forward. So those are the importance of emotions. Being aware of what our emotions are, part of emotional intelligence is just having a repertoire saying, I understand my emotions. I know what they mean, what their story is, and I know what they energize and how much energy they bring. You see here in Splutnik's Wheel of Emotions, this is kind of a flower, a two-dimensional, what they call a circumplex. How's that for a $20 word? But this shows you varying degrees of emotions and how they kind of fit and interplay with each other. Most of the times we live with an emotional state all the time. We can choose our mood to whether our emotions drive us or we drive our moods and move forward in life by our choice and our responsibility versus our reactions. And you see here, just a little explanation of, look at the bottom of the chart. A lighter energy emotion would be perseverance that can move into sadness. And ultimately, it could be very powerful emotion of grief. These are all kind of different emotions that kind of follow each other in different degrees of energy, because the energy is what moves us. And if we don't understand that energy, we don't know or may not be capable of utilizing it in a healthy or helpful fashion.
This goes back to Joy's question. If we don't understand the positive way and how to manage our emotions, it can often have a negative impact if we're not aware.
Yeah. There are 3 moods that we hope you'll be able to grow in responsibility with today. One is courage. And this is about the heart. And the story of courage is, I will do this even though I am scared. I will do this even though I am fearful or I am anxious. The next emotion or mood that we hope you're able to come out with some responsibility is compassion. And compassion means with suffering, being with this person in the midst of their pain, in the midst of their discomfort. And Sue is just kind of all over the place here for us for a moment.
Sorry, guys.
It's something valuable that I can do by being with somebody. A lot of times we feel like compassion is I have to do something, but really this with suffering, I just have to show up in my presence. Just being present brings comfort and encouragement. And we can be together apart right now, online, on the phone, even though we're not in person. Being part of a tribe, being part of a community is part of being able to lend compassion. So we want courage, we want compassion, and then we want to be about confidence. This is the state of feeling certain about something. It's a reliability of another person. And so the root of confidence is con, which means with, fideo, meaning faith. And so for Sue and I, our faith background is Christianity, our relationship with Jesus. Now, I'm not sure what your faith background is, and it's not impacting here that you have or share our faith background. But for us, our confidence is based both in a trusting relationship with God through our relationship with Jesus, but then talks about a greater relationship with the body of Christ or the community, or sometimes called the church. And so for us, confidence is built in not just in our faith spiritually in relationship with God, but also in relationship with people, in a relationship with community. And so we're glad that you've joined us in this community, and hopefully this will lend you some confidence and some trust that I have some people that I could do life with. Tips to press into emotion. So you want to share those with us?
Yeah, and we're gonna be going through these pretty quickly so that we can actually spend some time walking you through it a little bit later. Like like we said, if you have a pen and a paper and you want to take some notes now, but later we're really going to want you to just identify and walk through this on your own. So we're going to be using a couple of different tools. One of the tip number 2 that we've talked about throughout the week is pressing into your emotions, holding them, understanding them, rather than giving into them, like noticing what's going on. I'm feeling sad, or I do feel anxious. So we're encouraging people to do 3 steps, both with emotions and your beliefs. We're going to cover those. First is to discern, to identify what it is you're feeling, acknowledge it, hold it. The second is to diffuse that emotion. We're going to be allowing truth, and we're going to be inviting truth. We're going to be opening up a door from the inside out to what is truth. And we oftentimes as believers, we tend to say we invite Jesus into that space. And then thirdly, we decide on what our mood and what our presence will be as we walk forward.
So we have an audience question, and I'm glad they asked this because this was on the tip of my tongue as well. The question is, when fear creeps up in this process, do you have suggestions to help push through that fear?
Yeah. And a lot of these things are going to be actually doing that. We oftentimes will be talking about what is the emotion, but we oftentimes tie the emotion to a belief. And can you go to the next slide, Dave? So,
well,
go ahead.
Finish that. Part of coming back into recognizing fear, which is the discern aspect, is to become friends with it. Emotions are not right or wrong, good or bad. There's positive emotions and negative emotions according to the energy, but all that energy is helpful and healthy. And so if we recognize, we can welcome, say, okay, I'm going to discern and accept that I'm fearful.
Mm-hmm. And bless it, even for a minute, just to say, wow, I'm going to hold that fear. I'm going to be kind to it. I'm going to understand it. And until we understand it and where it's coming from, Oftentimes it's a very young place in us. And when I say young, it may not be all about what we're feeling right now. It may be what it's triggering from our past. And as coaches, we're all about helping people move forward.
Mhm.
But sometimes what's stopping us from really moving forward is something from the past. So we should be answering this question as we go along throughout the process today.
Yeah. And so
Now,
like you said, go ahead, Joy.
Dave, I think you mentioned the fact that emotions were neither good or bad, but somebody is asking about that. So could you elaborate on that just a little bit more?
Sure. Emotions are really a chemical and a neurological event that our bodies engage in. We can't control those emotions themselves. Those emotions create energy within our body. And what we do with that energy can be positive or negative. It can be helpful or unhelpful, helpful or unhelpful. And so as we look at those emotions, we need to say, okay, there's some energy being created. What am I going to do with it? What is my responsibility, my ability to respond to this surge of energy that's going on? And so that's why we say they're neither good nor bad. It's just a matter of how we're able, if we have the emotional intelligence of which to welcome them, acknowledge them, accept them, and then be able to say, okay, what am I going to do with this energy? And that, again, comes back to saying, what is the belief that goes along with this energy? And this, and Sue's going to talk a little bit more about that in tip 3.
Right. Most times our emotions are driven from beliefs, conscious beliefs or subconscious beliefs. And so as we hold the emotion, we welcome it rather than pushing it down, because again, once we push it down, it doesn't die. It comes out somewhere. So what am I believing to be true in this emotion? So if I'm fearful, why am I afraid? Well, I'm afraid I might do it wrong in this season. I might miss something. And so I oftentimes ask the question, if that is true, if that's true that I missed something, what then? What do I believe to be true? What will happen if I miss something? So again, our beliefs are very tied to our emotions. We go on to distinguishing what am I believing to be true is oftentimes really a lie. It's really not truth, even though it feels really true. And so as we hold that emotion and as we identify the belief, oftentimes that'll take us to a familiar emotion. Where is this emotion familiar? And then we're inviting truth in or inviting Jesus into that place. And so from that place, as we are able to invite Jesus to be with the young place in us that might feel like, I was doing this exercise recently, and I was aware of some low-level anxiety, and mine was just that. Mine was afraid that I was going to do it wrong. And I might make a mistake. If I made a mistake, what then? Then I'd be in trouble, or that would be a very bad thing. I would be bad. And it took me to a place where I was about 9 years old. I remember when I was getting ready to get braces, and it had an interaction between my parents. My dad got real angry with me about something. And I remember it was I'm sure my parents would die if they knew what the impact was on me from that small little encounter. But really, those places are oftentimes really young places in us that are vulnerable or wounded. And as we're kind and gentle to go back to those places, that's where the true freedom and healing takes place. And from that place, I can nurture the little girl, and I can see truth. I can invite Jesus to be with her. And from that place, I can move forward. And that's where I can choose and decide my mindset. Like, I'm okay. It's okay. I'm going to be all right. It wasn't my fault, and everything's going to be okay. And from that place, it really shifts my mood, and I can move forward.
Yeah, because again, that cycle of boiling down to say, what am I truly believing? For a young kid, if I make a mistake, I'm going to be ridiculed. If I'm ridiculed, I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to belong. I might be rejected or ridiculed.
Yeah.
And so that creates this belief that isn't really true. She wasn't kicked out of her family if she made a mistake. She survived through those years, but that underlying truth continues to make her sensitive to certain circumstances.
Right.
And that's why we're boiling down to the full truth is that, no, she did belong. She
Right.
was a member of this family. They weren't going to leave her on the curb in front of McDonald's.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, those young places in us, it's really important to tend to them, because as we tend to them, we can really move forward as an adult and with kindness to those places in our lives.
Hmm.
So
And we'll come back and practice it, allow you guys to do this in just a moment. Tip number 4 is choose your disposition. And we're talking about body position here. We want to engage our body. And as we walk through stressful seasons and seasons of anxiety, be aware of your diet, of your exercise, of your sleep. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I binging on Doritos? Am I getting out of my chair in front of the Netflix or PlayStation or whatever it might be, getting enough exercise? And so engage your body, understand what's going on, and then check your posture. Now, our posture, our body disposition, our body position, one is it's the highest level of communication we have. And so if I am fearful, I'm kind of pulled back and withdrawn. I can look angry. I could look detached. And that's going to communicate something to the people around me. But it also communicates to me. One of the things about emotions is that they are fuel for our bodies. And depending on how we hold our bodies, certain emotion and that energy can be utilized well or isn't utilized well. And so there's 4 different body positions, but for the most part, we want to just say, what is a healthy position when I'm trying to overcome fear and anxiety that tends to keep me stressed and withdrawn and pulled up tight, to say, oh, I'm going to lift my head up. I'm going to pull my shoulders back. I'm going to take a deep breath.
I'm going to open up.
Because when I open up, I'm better able to utilize this energy of fear and anxiety than if I'm all pulled up and kind of hunched into kind of a fetal position, whether that's standing or sitting or lying down on the couch, and saying, okay, how's my body prepared to be able to communicate? What's it communicating to me and what's it communicating to others, and how do I use this energy?
One quick tip here is we oftentimes say there's no good and bad emotions. But one quick way to actually shift our emotions is to breathe. It's been said that the quickest way to change an emotion is just to breathe. And so to, really open up your heart, put those shoulders back, open your hands, and take those deep cleansing breaths.
Yeah. And again, there's negative emotions, things that come across hard for us, and there's positive emotions. They're not necessarily good or bad, but negative emotions tend, like fear and anxiety, tend to cause us to close up our arms, tense our face, turn our bodies away from people, reduce eye contact. When we do that, it lowers our testosterone, it increases our cortisol, which feeds into stress. It reduces our ability to learn and our intuition and our perception. Where positive body position opens up our arms, put them down by our side rather than across our body, be extended or relaxed. Try to smile. Even that, if we are the smile, that can change our ability to respond appropriately, even with the energy of negative emotions, because now we have a body of which can carry that, has a container that can take better actions and have greater ability to respond well.
One of the things I noticed with the negative emotions really don't foster an atmosphere of presence, our ability to be present, to be open. With the positive emotions, we're able to be present in the midst of the situation, to breathe and
engage.
Yes, yeah.
So we can still take that energy from negative emotions like fear and anxiety, shift our body position and utilize that energy where we're not able to utilize that energy from a closed position or resolute position. So tip number 5, establish your presence. Get centered, press into emotions and the beliefs, focus your mind, your mood, and your spirit, and then choose the body or the container of which you're going to put this into practice. And these are things that we can practice hour by hour because these are skills that we can use. But as we begin to develop these skills into habits, now we're able to live from those and choose our moods rather than our emotions choosing and controlling us. So with that, we're going to jump right in and have Sue take us through a practice of establishing emotions. So we want you to start out and think through, what am I feeling in this season?
Yeah, yeah. And again, just establish your presence, put your feet on the floor, open up your heart, open up your hands. And this is a point in time where you probably want to put down anything you're writing. And then just take a deep breath and center in. Couple of deep cleansing breaths. And notice what you're feeling. Notice what's there. And I'm going to give some spaces and time for you to pause and identify. So, what are you feeling? And if nothing right in this moment, think of a time like maybe this week where you were pretty anxious or fearful or triggered. I oftentimes say push into the trigger. It's going to be really important in this exercise to stay connected to the emotion. When you disconnect from the emotion, you really won't get very far. So hold that emotion and identify, what are you believing in that emotion?
Invite your spirit to engage here,
Mm-hmm.
to bring about wisdom. The thing about the spirit is to say, boy, I want some super on my natural, I want some super perspective to see my situation from even beyond myself, that I can grow in awareness and gain the ability to discern my circumstances and truth beyond just what I believe to be true, maybe based upon the past experience.
If you're having trouble connecting with an emotion, what do you believe will happen if you connect with the emotion? If you let yourself connect with the emotion, what then? Identify, as you hold that emotion, what you're believing to be true. And we're going to keep pushing through, like deeper and deeper. And ask yourself the question when you have an answer, if that's true, what then? All the while holding your emotion, gently, kindly blessing it. Just for a minute. If that's true, what then? Oftentimes it takes us to a place of, I'm going to be utterly alone. I won't have any value. I'm bad. I'm going to die.
I'm not valuable. I don't belong.
And then we're going to kind of say, is that familiar? Where is that emotion familiar? Where are the young, tender places where that emotion is familiar? And you might even have an age.
Where you first experienced that feeling, those thoughts.
And don't discount little flashes of memories. So if you can hold that emotion and hold the belief, like together, we're going to invite truth. truth. We're going to invite Jesus into be with that experience, either with you now or with the young you. And just breathe and invite truth, invite Jesus in. What is the truth as you hold that, those two together? Soak it up. I oftentimes see like a sponge that's dried up and with water just being poured on it. Because truth goes deep. One of the scriptures that I love is that you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And I believe that's what this is really talking about in this place. And as you hold that truth, the real truth into the lie, those places that feel like lies or might feel true. What does Jesus want you to know?
What is your spirit telling you to do, to understand?
And maybe even about others around you. And as you hold the new truth in that place, what is it like to move forward from this place? There are a lot of reasons why this can go haywire, one of which is losing connection with the emotion. Another is what I call resistance. Like if I push into that emotion, I might cry. I don't want to cry. I might get depressed and I don't want to get depressed. It might be true, maybe it is true that I don't have any worth. We know that's not, but there's a lot of things that kind of resist us from going into the deep places. And so sometimes you might need some help. You might need somebody to walk with you through this process, because I've mentioned before, it's like holding a lot of different pieces together. You're using the right side of your brain and the left side of your brain together. And so sometimes it's really helpful to have somebody else walk you through this. And from this place, from the place of peace, the place of trust, say, how will I move forward in a spirit of truth, in a spirit of rest, kindness to the little parts of me that weren't really recognized or affirmed as a kid? How would the adult you speak to the little parts of you? And sometimes we can even nurture and be kind to those little parts of us. What we don't want to do is be judgmental and mean to those tender spots.
Mm-hmm.
And the adult parts of us can't be unkind. And so, but that's where when we invite Jesus in, we invite truth in, when we invite the best parts of us to bless and nurture the little parts, it can be really helpful to be able to move forward. Would you talk about choosing our disposition from this point forward?
So at this point, to create a presence, whether that's for us personally or whether that's for us in a leadership position, we want to come back and say, okay, so I've explored and I've discerned what these emotions are. I've diffused them by pressing into them. I've diffused these thoughts, what felt true, what I considered as true, but realized, man, that's not reality. That's not who I am. I am not abandoned. I am not unvaluable. And so we're going to embrace that truth. I'm going to decide that I'm going to focus on this capital T truth, excuse me, of what is my identity. My identity is that I'm valuable. I am trustworthy. I am faithful. I'm loyal. And I'm going to focus on that aspect. And so I'm going to decide, okay, here's my mood. Here's my truth. Here's the body I'm going to hold this in. If I need to move forward in courage, I'm going to take a stable stance. I'm going to kind of strengthen my core and say, I'm going to move forward from here. I'm going to focus forward. And this is the activity that I am going to do in the midst of this mood of courage.
One thing that's also helpful is really to use your imagination here to picture yourself with the presence you want to carry, with the mindset you want to. What would you be doing if you lived from that emotion? We also have some tools on our website, on a resources page, about things like collarbone statements that can also reinforce a mood and a mindset as well.
Yeah. So our website, lifesourcecoaches.com, is a resource. If you'd like the PDF of our slides and our notes for today, you can email us at Dave@LifeSourceCoaches or Sue@LifeSourceCoaches. And then we're also offering, if you're in a place where just walking through this exercise, you're realizing, man, I have some baggage from the past. I have some trauma that I've faced in my life that I'm going to need some help working through this, more than just a 10-15 minute practice personally. We want to offer you guys a chance at a discount rate to have an hour's coaching session with us. And so you can, online here, you can look up on our calendars and sign up for a Let's Get Through This Together. And we'll spend an hour and we'll help you kind of dive deep and discern, okay, what's going on? What do I need to focus on? What do I need to discover around what do I believe to be true, small t, versus what is truth? And allow to engage your full presence in that learning and in that shift and that transformation. We want to take a few minutes just with some questions that you guys might have. Joy, if there are anything in this chat session, are you guys welcome at this point just to unmute and throw your question out there for us? Or if you'd like,
we do.
Go ahead.
We do have a question that came in, and I apologize for you audience members. My dogs are losing their minds right now. One of the risks of working from home. So here's a question. It says, the disposition piece is helpful. The other day, I was literally paralyzed by fear getting ready to do a Facebook Live video, and I struggled figuring out how to push past the paralysis. It was a very physical experience in this instance. Maybe a physical disposition change is what you would recommend?
For sure. One of the TED Talks online, I forget who it was right now.
Amy Cuddy.
Talks about a victory disposition. So she talks about
Superman
taking
pose.
2 minutes to a Superman pose, open up your body, open up your chest, deep breaths, smile on your face, a focus or a mindset of saying, I am capable, I am competent, I am important and valuable. And as we hold that for 2 minutes, that body position and that focus and that mood of value and develops that confidence that overcomes our fear, it overcomes our anxiety and the physical restraints that comes with that as well. And so shifting our body can help us shift our mood and our mindset just as much as trying to find the right mindset and hope our emotions and our body follows along. Good question. Thanks for asking that.
So
Other questions?
can I piggyback off that? I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about that mind and body connection? Like why, like what makes that so powerful for us to like take a certain position, either while we're saying like a statement or while we're, I don't know, like I've heard even in worship, like if you're worshiping, taking different positions is going to change. Hey, hold on. Other room. Chorus right as I'm asking.
Good.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about that connection?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that in the slides, where open positions, big positions, actually increase your testosterone, decreases your cortisol, your stress hormone. But there's also something real, so there's chemical brain chemistry that impacts that. Again, chemically, between our beliefs and our emotions, that produces chemicals as well. And then really some of the ways that we've talked about, like with using your imagination to picture what it is you want. What would you be doing? How would you be speaking if you operated from a place of confidence? If this went the way you wanted it to, if you showed up authentically and just powerfully yourself. One of the things that helps me when I'm going into a new situation is, I think it was a Brene Brown study where she quotes a study anyway, where people were told to go into a room and be authentic, and then they were rated, and then they went into a room where they needed to make a good impression. And the people that went in to be authentic were rated by others much more powerfully and higher positively than the people that went in to go make a good impression. So when we're trying, we oftentimes, it's oftentimes counterproductive. And so if we can just go in with the right mindset, like I'm just going to be authentic, I'm going to be myself, it just shifts everything.
Yeah, there's a strong connection by the observer that I am. How I see life and what I think about it is part of what generates our emotions. And then those emotions hit our bodies with energy, and our brains need to decide, how am I going to react or respond to this? So this interconnection of these neural pathways going back and forth between the brain, our bodies, and the emotions or the hormones and the energy running through us are very, very interconnected. And sometimes as Americans, we tend to think, oh, I'm going to think my way through this. But in reality, we can shift and learn and grow by shifting our body, choosing our moods, being aware of our emotions. That will help us shift our mindsets rather than starting with the mind, starting with the body, starting with emotions, starting with the spirit, and saying, oh, what's wisdom say here? What does the Spirit of God say here?
Yeah.
So great questions. We've got time for maybe one more question.
Okay, I think this is going to be our last one, and this is coming from Zach. When we are caught in an emotion but unsure of what that emotion is, we just know we are hooked. Is it important to identify the emotion before moving forward, or is it just okay to recognize that we are feeling something negative and change our body position? What are some tips in helping us identify and name the emotion?
Part of that comes back of just doing some study of emotions, looking over those lists. I have a mentor of mine, his name is Dan Newby, and he has the schoolovemotions.world. And he's written a book called
Unopened Gifts.
The Unopened Gifts. It's available on Amazon. It's part of our resources here. Let me see if I can pull that up.
The other thing I oftentimes will do is I'll try on emotions. I'll try on different emotions. I'll say, am I jealous? No, jealous isn't quite it. Am I envious? Am I insecure? I'll try on some things. And sometimes I think it's true. I don't know that we need to always name it if we're having trouble there. I don't think we want to get caught up there. I think just
acknowledging the feeling,
yeah.
Realizing it, knowing there's energy there, and saying, okay, now I can start to choose my mood. Now I can start to choose my focus, as saying, how am I going to use this energy instead of allowing it to have us and keep us focused on something that's unhelpful or unhealthy, saying, okay, what am I, and that's part of the importance of saying, okay, what presence am I going to try to live out of? Because most of the time when we feel fear and anxiety, we tend to drop into a presence that isn't helpful or healthy. And if we start to plan and purpose intentionally, what is this presence I want to live from, and develop that practice into a habit, now we're able to take what is kind of uncontrollable to start with overwhelming emotions, even if we can't name them, and start to shift the rest of our presence to be constructive.
Can you show the emotions again?
Now let's see, was it 8?
There we go. Yeah.
So again, there's this chart. You can find different books, Dan Newby's being one of those, to learn about these. And there's a story that goes with these. And there's usually some paths, as Sue talked about in our exercise today, saying, okay, what is this emotion or this trauma associated with, and what's the belief that goes with it as well?
Good.
Good. So kind of in wrapping up here, email us if you want some slides. We're going to do life together. Upcoming events, overcoming conflicts. So starting next week on Monday, we're going to do 5 tips on dealing with communication, healthy communication that overcomes conflict in the midst of sheltering in place. Anybody have conflict in their life right now because of sheltering?
They do say that the divorce rate in China just skyrocketed after the quarantine, and really even domestic violence, family conflict is up in a big way.
Yeah.
So this is a timely, and hopefully there's not domestic violence in our homes, but you may be some internal violence going on in terms of our own hearts, and really some conflict. I know we've had some as we're together. So it's,
and then we're going to do another workshop just like this one, based upon those tips, and that'll be April 21st. We'll have another Zoom session. Hope you guys can join us, and maybe invite some of your team members or family members to come along with us as well. We recommend Joy as a virtual assistant. She has been marvelous for us the last 5 years. And let's see if there's anything else. That's it. So you guys, thanks again for joining us. We're gonna push the pause button on the recording here.